Hey everybody, it's the Robot here from Vespa Motorsport and ScooterWest.com. So for all things Vespa, check us out on the web, ScooterWest.com. So today I'm going to show you how to do some advanced diagnostic on something vintage. For instance, you have a vintage Vespa, you've tried everything, it just will not idle correctly, doesn't idle well, or the idle races, it's just you can't get it adjusted. You know your carburetor is perfectly clean, and no problems there. You know you got good compression. The typical compression on most Vespas in 1959 and newer, like rotary valve and newer, you should always get about 100 PSI of compression when you kick it through. I'm not going to do a compression check on this thing, but I know the cylinder and piston rings are all good on this, but it still doesn't idle right no matter what we do. So Scott, the lead technician, works for me at Vespa Motorsport Service Department. He happens to be my brother. He came up with a little apparatus for pressure checking the crankcase on a vintage Vespa, and I want to share that with you on this pretty cool Sears Allstate. The model number on this is a 788-94331. It's a pretty cool Allstate here. And at the end of the video, there's a couple Easter eggs I'll show you on this scooter before we finish up this video. Pretty quick video, so let's jump right into it. So the apparatus we have set up here is a pressure checking system from Snap-on. I'm sure you can get cheaper ones out there, but this is specifically for testing radiators. I even made my own fitting for pressure checking like a modern Vespa that's liquid cooled. A lot of times you got to put pressure on a radiator system to check for leaks or see if there's a compromised head gasket. But it happens to work really good for pressure checking the crankcase on a vintage Vespa. That's two-stroke. If you know about how the two-stroke theory works, the crankcase gas goes through, or the induction intake goes through the crankcase, and they use a rotary valve, which is part of the crankcase, the crankshaft, to open and close the intake charge. Well, the way this worked, you can see this thing looks pretty homemade. This is a Melosi intake manifold for a performance side draft like Del Ordo carburetor, and we put this plug in here with a rubber fitting. It looks pretty hokey, but it all holds pressure, and the whole idea is you remove the whole carburetor assembly, and then you're able to pressurize the crankcase through that. And the other part you need to plug off is the exhaust, and that's pretty easy to do. You remove the exhaust, and it's a little hard to see under here, but there's a vinyl cap, or you can use a rubber plug to plug off the exhaust. So pretty much spark plug's in there. It's kind of a closed system right now, and we could pressure check it. And typically, a Vespa has problems with idle. It will be your main seals, either the flywheel side main seal that's behind here, or the clutch side main seal that's behind the clutch. Other places you commonly get leaks that will cause running problems is the base gasket, which is right here. So just to kind of show you how this apparatus works here, I'll just pump it up to about 5 PSI and look at that needle drop. So there's no holding air. You don't want to pump it up too high pressure, but it just doesn't hold pressure. And ideally, we'd pump this up. You'd use your ears or a stethoscope to listen for the leaks. You could check for the crankcase leakage at 2 spots, for the crank main seals. You got the flywheel side main seal right behind here. You'd look for a leak under here. And you have the clutch side main seal. You could check it at the vent that's on the back of the motor. So on the clutch cover, there's a vent that's for the crankcase, and if there's air leakage through that little top hat thing, that's kind of like keeps dirt from going in the engine, then you got a clutch side main seal air leak. So here I got soapy water. I'm going to go ahead and pressurize the crankcase. I already know where the leak is. So, one place I'd spray is at the base. I see no bubbles forming at the base gasket. This is your cylinder. This is the deck of the crankcase. but I do know there's a seal. You know, the leak is mainly on this side, and you can see the bubbles forming. You know, when you pressurize it, it leaks right out on that flywheel side seal. You can see the bubbles forming right in there. So a homemade rig like this, you know, built for something where we have to check a lot of vintage Vespas, is great for a shop environment. It might be a bit much for the home mechanic that's restoring one Vespa. At that point, you probably just go through the motor anyways, but in a shop environment, we got to properly diagnose a scooter and accurately quote what repairs are necessary to get customer's vehicle on the road. So this is just one tool that we made, helps us out. It's not something simple like a base gasket leak that we can just pull the cylinder. Unfortunately, we'll let the customer know we're going to have to tear the motor apart. I think the scooter's been ridden, it shifts through all the gears good. They're pretty low power motors, but we do some other preventive maintenance like replace the shifting cross, obviously all the seals, gaskets, O-rings, everything that's some sort of seal in the motor. Typically, anytime a motor comes apart, you change all those parts. But I just want to share that with you. Thought you'd find it interesting. And let me just go on to some of the Easter eggs that you find on this unique American market Vespa Allstate. So if you don't know much about Vespa history, through the 60s, the Sears store, which was the biggest mail order department store kind of in America up until like Amazon stomped them out. Well, back in the 60s, they imported these Vespa scooters, and you can buy them through the catalogs or through the stores. And they had this unique badge I love. It's like a pot metal aluminum badge. It says Allstate. It's got the outline of the United States of America. It's essentially a Vespa VBB, a 150 Vespa. They had some less expensive ones that did not have a speedometer and didn't even have a front dampener for the front. Then you got the next step up where you had a speedometer and a dampener. There's a couple different variations. They also had a small frame, Primavera 125. But this scooter is pretty original for the most part. Original so far that it's got the original tires that came with this scooter. And what's neat about these tires is they say Allstate Crusair on them. And I rarely ever see the original tires on a scooter from the 60s. These tires are over 50 years old, probably coming on 60 years old right now. And they're still holding air. I wouldn't recommend really riding with them. They feel like rocks, but you know, it's obviously this thing hasn't been left out in the field to rot for 30 years. It's probably more or less based on how nice and glossy the paint is. You know, it's probably been buffed out. It's had a nice sheltered life in a garage. There's no way tires would last that long, but pretty remarkable. It's still got the original tire on it. I think the rear's been changed. It's got like a Michelin tire. And I'll show you the Sears badge that they had. Had the Sears model number, Sears Roebuck and Company, USA, but it also says made in Italy and has Piaggio on it. So that's the unique badge for the Sears scooters that were imported in the 60s. Just kind of a cool little piece of Vespa Americano history. Pretty neat. There's some other things that are kind of goofy on the scooter. So we put a 10-inch center stand. That's why the front tire is so high off the ground. Somebody kind of obviously worked on it at one point to get it going. The new tank in it. But pretty cool scooter nonetheless, even though it's not like a top-of-the-line model such as the Vespa GS that would have been sold at the same time as this. Thanks again for watching. This is Robot here from Vespa Motorsport and ScooterWest.com. Consider helping this YouTube channel out. It's all about Vespas. I have over 600 videos. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't. If you're looking for parts and accessories, of course, check us out on the web, ScooterWest.com. Thanks again.